Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Q&A where we talk about direct current therapy, where it just makes you better, stronger, faster, and just live a healthier life. And with me is our host, the fearless leader, and the one who's going to be asking all the questions, our CEO, Matt Dell. Matt, good to have you back in the house. How you doing today?
Fantastic. How you doing today, Jake?
I'm good. And I know we always say this, we have some good ones, but this one I've been looking forward to for quite some time.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. This is probably the most organized I've been for one, only because I've been getting so much pressure that our guest today has some incredible things going on with direct current. So,
Yeah.
I mean, very, very excited about introducing our guest to our audience and let's get to it.
Yeah, we why waste any time, So like you said, let's jump into it. There's a lot of flavors to share on him. So today's guest doesn't just coach pitchers, he builds them. I'm thrilled to welcome Coach Zinger, also known as Jon Huizinga, the founder of Fuel Factory Pitching Development, a cutting-edge training platform for athletes eager to push limits. He's trained over 300 MLB pitchers and more than 600 professional players over the course of the past 8 years. But what sets Coach Zinger apart isn't just the results, it's how he gets there. His methods are as raw and as real as the game itself, from barefoot grounding sessions and cold plunges in natural rivers to breathwork, biomechanics, and full system recalibration. He trains pitchers to move like athletes and breathe like warriors. His journey started at Michigan State, continuing through a 14-season professional career, and he came to life in 2011 with the launch of Backyard Baseball Lab, where we now know as Fuel Factory. And now there's a new fire, because Coach Zinger thinks the direct current technology he's working with might just be the key to something even bigger, something that he has made him wonder, something looming over his head, a question that many are often too fearful to ask. Is there more in the tank for me? Can I come back? What if? What if I'm not done yet? And that's the question we're going to probably ask him. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Coach Zinger. There comes a point in every man's life when the world whispers, "You've done enough." When the noise gets louder, the clock ticks faster, and people start to expect less. But every now and then, someone refuses to listen. He doesn't slow down. He leans in. He trains harder, smarter, with tools others never heard of, technology they don't understand. Because he's not chasing what was, he's chasing what could still be. Not for them, not for the applause, but for the fire that never quite went out. He's been here before, felt the weight of silence, the sting of being counted out, the quiet war inside between what's safe and what silently calls your name. The older you get, the more you're expected to forget the dream, to let it go, to settle into stories you didn't write. But what if the dream didn't forget you? What if the game's still waiting? For the one man crazy enough to believe that there's still more in the tank. That strength isn't just in youth. It's hiding in the shadows, rooted deep within your soul, and the unquenchable belief that every inch forward still matters. It's not about age. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Life tried to bury you, tried to drown you in doubt, tried to hand you a script, fade out, sit down, be done. But that fire, that one spark deep within your gut, it never left. It clawed. It screamed. It burned through every failure, every whisper that said you missed your shot. And when the world said give up already, that fire didn't whimper. It stood tall and shouted right back in its arrogant face, "I'm standing right here." This ain't the end of my story. I'm not some leftover chapter. You don't know me. You don't know the battles I faced, the demons I fought, the nights I've bled for progress no one else could see. You haven't climbed the mountains I've had to crawl. You haven't heard the voices I've had to silence. You don't define me, and you don't decide when I'm done. Because life isn't about second chances or one more shot. It's about commanding results. And when the final pitch is thrown and the dust settles and the crowd fades away, the only thing that matters are the outcomes.
Wow.
Jake.
Fire me up. Fire me up. How
Holy
now?
That was absolutely incredible. Wow. Coach Zinger,
How we
Jake's
doing?
got
How
some
we doing? That was amazing,
fantastic,
Jake.
Thank you. Yeah.
Fired me up.
good stuff, Jake.
All
Really,
your
really
videos fired
impressive.
me up, buddy.
So welcome. So Coach Zinger, tell me and Jake and everybody watching now live a little bit of your backstory. Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about just bring us up to date of who you are as a coach and a person.
Okay, originally from a small town between Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo, Michigan. Played my college baseball at Michigan State, and after that signed into an independent league. Had my contract bought by the Brewers. 2003 played in the Midwest League. That was kind of the beginning of the journey, and then a whole bunch of stops in between, and a whole lot of awesome memories and relationships built. Now brings me, whatever year it is here, let's see, a bunch of years later, getting to coach pitchers, and from little leaguers up to major leaguers, and working, basically living my dreams still, which is, I had a conversation with my daughter this morning, just how thankful I am that I'm able to still do what I love and still pursue, this path that I'm on. So very, 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 very thankful for what I get to do.
I love it. Now, where are you located? Are you?
So I'm in basically Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
The
Awesome.
facility
Yeah,
that I work at's in Avondale, so it's on the west side of Phoenix.
Nice.
Okay. Well, tell us a little about how that started and your journey into, coaching and your fuel factory.
Okay, so coaching journey started way back when I was originally basically told that I was done playing, right? Because I went undrafted out of Michigan State, and I had a pitching coach. His name was Joe Fletcher, that ran a thing called Fletch's Pen, and Fletch's Pen, basically, I was kind of like his sidekick, if you will. So he'd be training guys and he'd be training me, but then maybe I'd be catching kids, or building dirt mounds, or working the guys out, or I kind of started to learn the coaching side while I was still obviously pursuing my dream, which was really cool, and it gave me some different perspectives that I think really helped me as a player as well. Learning to see the joy and the beauty in the game, as a kid, but then being able to instill the work habits that we were taught, with the next generation.
That's awesome. Now, did you grow up as a pitcher? Did you play other positions, or what was your background through your
I mean,
professional?
once I got to college, I was a pitcher only. When I was in high school, I mean, I would pretty much play anywhere. I mean, I can remember catching, playing third and first a lot. My high school coach, actually, some of the most fun I ever had was, there was an inning or an out limit. So I think it was 27 outs we got for a week. And I would go play first base to start an inning, and somebody else would be on the mound. And then if somebody got on second base, I would get to come in and kind of like close that inning. So he used my outs very uniquely, and my arm, I believe, was built uniquely because of that, and through that, because I mean, I had a rubber arm pretty much my whole life, still have a rubber arm. So
if I'm hearing you correctly, you only were allowed 27 outs a week?
yeah.
Wow. And what was that, just to kind of, was it more of a game, a kind of a mental game, or was it just to try to save your arm?
I think it was probably a way, probably like a way to, like a pitch count ish, like to save arms. It was probably also a way to regulate maybe pure domination too. Like if you were just, you hear stories about Satchel Paige back in the day throwing double headers, right? Where it was like the hitters maybe wanted to have a little more fun, so some of the pitchers had to switch out.
I love it. It kind of, I mean, regardless of what the motivation was, what an awesome, it's kind of like as a kid, especially high school, it's like, I want those 27 outs as quick as possible. I want them done by Thursday, or, you know what I mean? I want to be the first to get to my 27 outs. That's pretty cool. So, and obviously then you went into to college and you know, what got you out of Michigan and into the Sunshine States of Arizona?
So it's kind of a funny story, because usually like people will ask that, like, why'd you move from Michigan to Arizona? And, you know, part of it was to say no to snow, but the other part was I had moved to Arizona for rehabbing my elbow.
Okay.
And usually like we're out and about, my wife's a travel agent, and we were just in Cancun, and somebody was like, you know, asking that same thing. And I said, well, at rehab. And she goes, you need to specify what kind of rehab you're talking about, you know, because people's minds can go other places. And I was like, I never even really thought of it. It's just like, you know, it was rehab.
Right.
And, but yeah, long story short, moved out to come out here. I had what was supposed to be a career ending arm injury in 2004. And I moved to Arizona to work out at a place called Physiotherapy and Associates with a guy, Keith Coker, who one of my pitching coaches had done his rehab, Wes Crawford, with the Angels. And he was like, let me call Keith and get you in with him. And he basically helped me move to the Arizona, to the beautiful desert out here.
Yeah, you gotta love it. Compared to the shoveling snow, I see it's a pretty good move. So then you stayed, and you know, I love it. So you've been around baseball. I mean, it sounds like, based on Jake's intro, you've had your hands on and worked with a ton of pitchers in the MLB and players in the MLB. Tell our listeners a little bit about that journey. I mean, how did you get to that? Did you have success early on with some MLB guys, and then, you know, did that just kind of word of mouth, or just how does that all work?
So originally, like he mentioned, Backyard Baseball Lab. I had Backyard Baseball Lab, and I had former teammates that would come back. Cameron Lowe was a guy he was a big league guy. Manny Parra was a big league guy. I'd played against Cameron, but I'd played with Manny. Guys like Tyler Wagner, guys that I had played with that were out for spring training or whatever, and then they would come over, you know, just to either hang out or get a little extra throwing in. And then, you know, word of mouth kind of spreads. I want to say probably 20 to 25 big league guys had came in the Backyard days. And then we opened up Fuel Factory. And I think it was 2018, technically, we opened up Fuel Factory and continued to grow, you know, word of mouth. And, you know, really at the time, there was no count going on. It was just like helping guys out. And even now there's not a count anymore. But there was a point where it was like people started asking, like, man, there's been a lot of guys through here. How many guys have been through here? And then, you know, we start going through the video logs, and it's like, well, we can't, you know, and it basically we were at 250 probably 2 years ago ish. And we just kind of stopped counting. But the pandemic was definitely a big boost to our culture, but also to the expansion of the network that we had, because, you know, guys their facilities were all closing down and they needed places to go. And, you know, I think there was 5 different teams that their coaches and their players were coming in kind of on the down low, if you will, you know, because the world was a little chaotic. So it was kind of like a Fight Club, you know, where it's like there is no Fight Club, but we boarded up all the windows, did our best to usually keep the doors closed, you know, and locked when people were there. And then we also had a backyard with one of my buddies that lives out here and became my buddy out here. And he had a backyard set up that he allowed me to bring a couple mounds out there and basically set up some dirt mounds in his backyard. And we had dual things going on with another guy out here that trains pitchers, Jordan Zimmerman. So we basically had the Fuel Factory guys and then his Zimmerman performance guys. And it was a combination of, you know, young guys and old guys. And it was cool. Like, you know, you might walk in the backyard and see, just for example, because it's a video that's out there, but Dustin May throwing 97 miles an hour in the backyard with his big old leg kick. And then you got a kid, Colton LaFave, that's playing out here. I think he's at Central Arizona, but if you see him on Jordan's page, he's got a big old leg kick, and I talked to Jordan, he's like, oh yeah, he picked that up watching Dustin in the backyard, but it was a very unique time, and it was, kind of a bonding experience for a lot of us. But I think that's, that 2020 up until now has just been, yeah, I guess word of mouth. And then, for me, it's been a learning ground where it's like, I think a lot of guys will hear how many guys are there and they're like, oh, wow, look at Zing. He's had all those people there. And it's like, for me, it's the other way around, where it's like, I've got to learn from being around all those guys. And I know there's things that I've been able to share, but the amount of knowledge and experience that I've gained from conversations, with all-stars and Cy Young Award winners and, some of the best pitchers in the game, it's been awesome for me when I start off with, let's say, a little leaguer now, and he's coming in, and for me, I basically use what I call the snowflake theory, but each pitcher's and each human is uniquely different, especially the way they think about things, the way they respond to things. Some guys need a hug, some guys need a kick in the butt, and then everywhere in between. And I think the fun part for me is learning how to speak their language, but then also knowing, with the wealth of experience that I've seen, being able to share, with the next generation. It's just been awesome. And it's, once again, I'm just so thankful for the way that things kind of lined up, because it was less than glamorous at times, I will definitely say. So
yeah, I think with all that experience, I would trademark, I'd be calling you Coach AI Zinger, since you've got all that knowledge base. You are like the first intro to AI. If you've got 250 Cy Young guys, pro guys, college guys, that now you get to pass that along to all levels, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's fun, because it's been like 20 plus years that I've been doing this, and it's, just there's a Garth Brooks song that's called "Back When the Old Stuff Was New," and it's a jam, so you got to look it up. But the idea behind it, when I listen to it, I mean, it gives me goosebumps to even say it, but it's like a lot of times it's reminders to things that I was actually taught when I was coming up. There's nothing new under the sun. Like there's new ways of saying things, and you see, I mean, I swear every day I see a new internet coach pop up that reinvented something that he says is brand new, that it's like, dude, this has been around for longer than you or I, and you're trying to say that you made this up. And I'm like, dude, there's so much good stuff that's been passed on from generation to generation to generation that I think, for me, I like to make sure I do a good job of giving credit where it's due, and passing it on in such a manner that guys can also, learn how to do the same, where it's the idea of, you teach a man to fish, you feed him for his life. But if I were to just give a man a fish, I'm only going to feed him for that meal. So it's teaching guys to be their own best coach. It's learning, how they think about their throw versus just having a preconceived notion on this is what it's supposed to look like. And hold on, you can't do it like that. Or, there's just so many things out there that I think are being mistaught when they're getting cookie cutter approaches, where I think, guys need to be unique. If we're really going to see the absolute best out of guys, we got to let them be the animal that they are, let the beast within come out,
Yeah, I love it. And before we jump into kind of the direct current and how that got introduced to you, I want to ask a question. It is unbelievable, and I want to get your insight. Obviously, it's got to be technology, it's nutrition, it's weights, but it is amazing. Like back in the day, a 90 mile an hour fastball was like, that was crazy. And now it's like 95, 100 is how and why, in your opinion, is it mechanics? Is it nutrition? Is it combination of technology, all of it? Why is that now become the norm?
I mean, I think part of it is because we valued it as a whole, as baseball, and I think at the highest level, it's going to trickle down. But I think also the technology, they're measuring it different now too. So, you'll hear old school scouts all the time, but it's like the guns that they used to have, just, they measured it different. There was still guys, maybe not as many guys, but there was guys that threw as hard as anybody's ever thrown. So
Yeah.
I think as a whole, yes, there's more, but I think, that's still that, let's say, people talk about maybe 120-mile-an-hour fastball might exist, right? Where it's like, okay, there's been guys, Nolan Ryan, Satchel Paige, the legends you hear about, Walter Johnson, Sandy Koufaxes, and it's like those guys have thrown really, really hard. And I think if you put those guys on today's technology, you would see similar numbers. I'm thinking, as far as
Yeah.
the ability to do it over and over and over and over and over again, I think the pushing that human performance, there's a lot of guys. I mean, from breath work to visualization to, direct current technology, the amount of options that are out there for guys to kind of maximize or push their limits, if you will.
Hmm.
It's there, and I think also the world, right, where it's like it's more than just your neighbor. Where I tell guys all the time, you're competing against guys that you've never met before,
Hmm.
and I think there's people all over the place that have been, putting in work and trying to, dig and scratch for that next tick. And yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And that leads us into, tell our listeners, tell us, I'm interested to hear how and when did you ever hear of direct current, and what led you to incorporate that, but how did you hear about it, and tell us a little bit about that.
So it's been a while. I've got a few buddies. Cameron Lowe is one of them. He has, and he would have to tell you what technology exactly it is. We used to
Mhm.
just call it. He had a lightning stick, where it was I want to say it was invented for the yips, if I remember right, and it was a golf putter at the time originally, and it had
Mhm.
a technology to it that I loved it. I would turn it up to 100 because it felt like I was holding onto a lightning rod, And then one of my buddies, they call him the pitching doctor online. He has done a lot of direct technology stuff. And then Seth Blair is another guy who, and I know they pretty much are daily users.
Mhm.
And then I've read a fair amount of Bruce Lee's old stuff, and I think there's a connection to that as well, right? Where it's like he was on to something with that. And, with this one, it was Ben Wetzler that came by and, connected us. And once I've started as a daily routine, I mean, I swear by it. I love it.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about that first intro when you got when you got the device, and you started learning. How did you incorporate that into your training for your athletes?
Yeah, so like for me, I really like to kind of follow basically a principle of like martial arts. If I was going to go learn martial arts from somebody, I would want to make sure that, let's just say, they could kick my butt, right? If I were to walk into a martial arts studio and I see somebody that I could, just flick and they're out of the way, like it'd be hard to buy into that concept. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of times I've dealt with a lot of people who, let's say they're in a profession that is in the health field or in the movement field or whatever, and they're not walking their talk. And it's something that for me, as long as I'm going to coach, I'm going to continue to push myself to walk that talk of getting one day better, to keep pushing limits. But long story short, I wanted to practice on myself first before I started, implementing with my guys.
Okay.
And so I basically dove into the materials that you have, which are awesome, all the protocols. And basically I just kind of was a test dummy and started doing it, from static, like, hey, I'm watching a ball game and I'm just sitting here,
Hmm.
and also doing it to, maybe doing, workouts and all that kind of fun stuff. And then,
Okay.
I've continued to dabble, but I've really, the protocols you have are solid, and I've really been using those.
Okay.
And then, as far as like guys always ask me like, what's my favorite one or what have I felt? And I think the VMO and the tib is probably my favorite as far as like the noticeable difference that I've had just in the ability to have a muscle mind connection.
Mhm.
And I think just the upper body stuff's been awesome too. As far as I've had a couple of I had a couple.
Are we losing him?
Uh-oh.
Dislocated it, and of course I kept playing, and whatever, and then I had another bad accident with my my left big toe here, and I completely smashed it and basically lost the ability to claw or use my foot. And when I started using it, especially with VMO and on that tib, there's been such a response to that natural reflex again of clawing and being able to feel like I can walk right again versus feeling like I was always kind of going around that spot instead of being able to move how I know I'm supposed to.
Yeah. So tell me, what are your thoughts? Is this a game changer? Like, how do you use it kind of before a game, or how do your athletes use it before a game, maybe after a game, recovery? What are your
Yes, so
thoughts on
I think it depends on the day. So typically, if we're programming days, we like low, medium, and high intensities, just kind of general, right? As a scale,
Mhm.
you can kind of be anywhere on that scale. But the key would be like, hey, if I'm doing a low intensity day, I need to make sure I stay in that low intensity range. If I'm in a high intensity day, I want to make sure I get to that high intensity range. And that could be for throwing, that's for the weight room, all the stuff that we're doing, right? So I think that kind of determines how we'll use it on a given day. Sometimes with a new athlete, I just do the scan and kind of use it, listen to what it tells us. With
Mhm.
other guys, it's, it kind of depends. Every guy kind of comes in with their own unique things, but if
Okay.
it could be something in their delivery, where they're having a hard time, let's say, connecting to the feeling on their backside. And so I can hook it up on that same little hookup I was telling you, and then get them to maybe feel something or activate something that, for some reason was failing to have a feeling or that fire, So
Yeah.
I think a lot of times it's an awareness for guys too, and I
Mhm.
always tell guys it's like with anything, if you just come in and you just do something one time and you expect that it's going to be the end all be all, like this, that you're in the wrong thing, right? There's
Mhm.
no magic pill, no magic bullet. It's not an oil change. This is a process, but I think that muscle mind connection is a huge thing that's missing. Like I think
Mhm.
a lot of guys, they're just for example, something I deal with a lot, they'll watch some Instagram videos and they think because something worked for somebody, they're going to go try it. But they have no idea the context of how or why that was implemented for that specific athlete. And I think there's no just shotgun spread approach. If we're really getting to high levels, I think we need to have, individualization of stuff. So getting guys to be a little more tapped into what they specifically need, sometimes comes down to more of a muscle mind connection versus just a like a full
Shotgun
blast
approach.
approach. Yeah, like a
Yeah,
full blast
exactly. Yeah.
approach where, and trust me, I'm as guilty of that as anybody, especially coming up where it was like, if you'd see somebody at that time, there was not the Instagram, social media world, right? It was more like you'd go to the gym and you'd see somebody do something, or you'd have for me, it was Muscle and Fitness, right? You'd get this Muscle and Fitness magazine and watch what these bodybuilders are doing. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to go. And then, there is obviously a time and place for building the body, but it's also, to me, I think it's emotion, and we're teaching our body, no matter what we do, either to do something the way we want to do it or not the way we want to do it. And I think just being intentional, versus just a how big can I get my bicep to be approach.
Yeah. It sounds, I mean, again, going back to why I think we got to call you pitching AI, coach pitching AI zinger, because it's an individual approach. Obviously, you've learned utilizing the technology on the scan and trying to figure out where the compensation and breakdowns are, and then put together kind of a organized individual plan for the athlete, really, where you've got those, strength building days, those recovery days and all that. And so typically when you're utilizing direct current with the individual athletes, how long are the sessions? And tell us a little bit about how that goes. Is it what's the length of those, and how do you incorporate it if I were a new, pitcher coming to your facility?
So I think a lot of times, if it's somebody, let's say it's a post throwing, and it's I'm going to go for 20 minutes basically. Mm-hmm. If it's the scan, and we kind of go through, a lot of times if they can do something for 20 minutes, I like that. Other times though, like we're maybe just using it for a specific exercise, like a movement and mm-hmm. like a corrective, if you will. And then when we're done, we'll take it off. So it kind of, I use it for so many different things. If it's a pre thing, it's going to tend to be, a little bit less, maybe a 4 out of 10 scale. Mm-hmm. And versus like afterwards, sometimes, especially myself, I'm going to kind of push it, and I'm going to see how high I can get on it. Right. And
yeah, see, exactly.
Of course you are.
Get that puppy going. Right. I want to grab the lightning, but I think it really depends on the intention, and then for me, I really like going through some of the movements, and learning how to relax through the movement, even though, you at first, initially, a lot of times you might feel like you got to fight it, mm-hmm. and allowing, that flow to happen, and then, kind of giving into it, and I think and I've been learning, Jake. So, I mean, as you continue to do the, the learning material, it's been awesome. I like learning the different frequencies too, where it's, if I'm doing something at 500 pulses a second, or if I'm doing it at the lowest setting of it's 40 or 50, right?
40. Yep.
Yeah. So the 40, it's more direct, right? Like more like a hammer approach, you'd say, versus like the faster is more of a spreading it out, perhaps, would be a way to say it. How would you say that?
I would say for the movement retraining and the neurological aspect, I would say 500 is probably your best setting when you're going through pitches. When you're trying to retrain, kind of like what Matt was talking about, and then when you're trying to activate. So you were talking VMO and tib anterior. The 40 is really good for that, because you're specifically hitting and targeting those areas that you want to fire up. So 40 does really good for that.
Yeah. So I mean, I love that.
Yeah. And so when so bringing this technology in, like when we hear this, I want to hear, this is kind of an open discussion, were you skeptical a little bit bringing in new technology, into the business, and what were there any of those? I always love to ask this question. What were some aha moments when all of a sudden you saw the outcomes because of the direct current?
I think my skepticism had got blasted a ways back, just because I was so into, especially with Cameron Lowe, and then, with Blair and with Doc, I was able to see that, the daily, basically, because I think we all use it every day. And mm-hmm. the energy, I think, is where, with the new guys sometimes, where they're like, okay, I see where some of the energy blasting out of you comes from, where it's like, yes, a lot of it is internal, it's that drive, all that fun stuff, that fire, if you will, that you have. But I feel like this just stokes it. And like, mm-hmm. for me, a lot of times, like if I wake up and let's say for some reason I was super comfortable when I woke up in the morning, was just like, felt like butter, like I'd be kind of disappointed. Right. Where it's like, what did I do yesterday to just feel like this is like a walk in the park? Right. Like typically I wake up and I do have sore spots on my body, mm-hmm. and I've always kind of learned to lean into that through my training, versus like I see a lot of guys that they're sore and they're like, they need a day off. And it's like, for me, I think that this tool specifically is awesome, because I can push myself that day before, and I wake up and it's like, I can feel those spots and whatever, but like you start just doing like a wake up, or like I call it a wake up, but like the scan. And, it's just kind of like, I feel good. And it's kind of like, you're getting to that buzz, you're getting to worker bee status. So you're ready to go.
I love it. And you had mentioned you work with some youth. Tell us, your opinion of using direct current with the age groupers and the levels of players that you work with.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I ask the parents first, and a lot of times, honestly, I use it on the parent first. So a lot of time, it depends. I have certain clients that, I have good relationships with, and I know, hey, he was a former athlete, and, blah, blah, blah. So it leads to a conversation first, but then I'm like, hey, have you ever tried this? And then, a lot of times I think, like, Jake found some of the videos that were firing me up, but people will see that, and then they ask questions. So they'll be like, hey, why do you do that? And then a lot of times, I'm a guy, I would rather show you than tell you, because I think a lot of stuff can get lost in translation and in words. And like I mentioned earlier, I'd really rather walk something than talk it. So I'm more comfortable in that space, just sharing. So with the adults, a lot of times I have them use it, and then once they've used it, then it's, can I use it on Johnny? Hey, I want to see how he does with his axial wheel post throwing, and see how he does, and then, I've never had anybody say no. But so, yeah, just kind of implementing. I think a lot of times with the college guys, they're very curious. So same thing, they get a lot of questions. I mean, literally they're running a circle on the thing after we have a training session. So it's like, somebody will go use it for 20 minutes, and then the other guys go do something. And then, they're cycling in and out of that station.
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
So, and I think, especially guys start to gravitate towards it, because it's something that's, energy is almost one of those things that's unknown, or unseen, but it's felt. And I think sometimes with these guys, that's the comment that I'm getting, where it's like they might be, let's say they feel like they push themselves and they're sore, but being sore was a good thing, because they feel like they're making, for me too, like I said, I like to feel like I'm making progress, like I did something.
Yeah. This technology definitely does. So for those that how many times, Jake, do I say this is the best kept secret? Direct current is in professional sports, collegiate, anybody, even weekend warriors. But I always want to get your opinion. How do you think this compares to just other modalities, like just even the simple, ice, recovery ice, massage, cupping, even, like the other TENS units like a Mark Pro?
I'm pretty biased, honestly. I love this thing, especially, and I have dabbled in a lot of other things, and I still I really like cold plunges. I do contrast showers. I love the grounding. I feel like the ability to do it now, and the ability to take, let's say I'm on a high intensity day, and I can take a very simple move that I think in the past, maybe I would have tried to complicate and try to do something crazy. Now I can stay with something that's pretty simple, but I can still have the challenge level of what I was looking for, maybe with a super advanced, just move, or something, even, to be honest, borderline dangerous, in my own, especially when I was young, where it was like, I had bulged a disc in my back in 2000, right before Rocky spring training in 2007. I bulged a disc in my back from doing some stupid training, where it was like, now I feel like this is one of those tools where it's like I can feel like I'm being a lot more focused and specific, but I'm also not necessarily having to do something that's borderline stupid to try to push for that next, like we were talking about earlier, that next mile an hour, or that next, spin, or whatever it is that I'm fighting for to get for that next job or that next opportunity. If I can be more strategic and I can be smarter, I feel a lot better about that. And like I said, I've made enough mistakes along the path to learn from them, but also I want to continue to move forward from there. So
Yeah, well, good. And I always hate to ask this question because Jake will immediately after this Q&A ask for more money. But tell us about the training aspects and the videos and some of the support that you get. And feel free to throw Jake under the bus if it's not good, because
No,
it'll
I
save
mean,
me
I
a
love
few
it.
bucks.
I mean, and you saw some of it in the videos, because I basically I'm a visual guy and I'm a
Mhm.
list guy. So for me, if I take a screenshot of something and I make a list with it, that's really good for me. And I like systems, and I like, if you see the back end of my stuff, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of depth to what we have in the back end. But the idea of keeping it simple too, where it's like, I feel like some of the stuff I've studied in the past, they're going to lose you in the training, where you're like, okay, I already got it. Like, let's go. Where it's like, I think
Mhm.
Jake did a good job of, let's just say he hit the nail on the head and then he moves on to the next thing. So I felt
Mhm.
like it was very digestible in that way, versus some of the training stuff I've been through. I feel like it gets cobwebs, because it
Okay.
gets too complicated. And I think he's done a good job of making it practical and something that I can apply, simply.
Damn.
So
Jake, every
that
single
vacation,
Q&A.
that
Yeah.
vacation time I've been asking you for, that should be approved at this point.
Well,
Well, you should have already
he's
got it from that video you made, but
yeah, exactly. He's already got an hour nap time, built into his contract. Now he's going to be asking for more, but that's awesome.
that's funny.
So to tell, I mean, it sounds like you work with a lot of pitchers. So have you seen, kind of velocity or endurance or strengthening help your pitchers because of the direct current?
I have, and I've also, I'd say, if I was to put it to like the best ways, like, guys can bounce back. I feel like they're bouncing back quicker and easier,
Okay.
and they're able to. I think a lot of it's the feel, and that's what it's been for me too. Where it was like and it's funny, but the body, it's like it shuts off light switches sometimes, especially with, I was in a bad car accident, and the body goes into protect mode. And I feel like this has been a way for me to kind of rewire the the ability to have reflexes that I always had before that. I
Hmm.
think when it's something that's almost like, once you turn that light switch on, I feel like it helps kind of everything. So it's not necessarily that maybe I see somebody gain 5 miles an hour from a session, but I see them have more feel, and they're being more consistent in that realm. And now they're going to have an ability to be more competitive, versus somebody that was, they'd lose the feel. A lot of guys, the funny thing about pitching, training a lot of pitchers, is a lot of times we feel it and we do it wrong, but when we do it right, there's no feeling. I call it knife through warm butter. Or you hear guys
Okay.
that they hit a home run and they're like, they felt nothing. And I think that's something that, with this, especially afterwards, it's like we're putting a feeling to the good rep, versus sometimes, the only thing we feel is like the draggy one, or the one that you yank. And it's like, okay, yeah, I felt whatever, all my energy went that way. And the one that was
Hmm.
like just that, you're like, oh man, I felt nothing. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I love that. However, it makes it harder to maybe get back to that when you lose that. And a lot of
Yeah.
times, I'm dealing with guys that sometimes are coming in because they're broken.
Yeah.
So, and it's more than just the physical. Like, a lot of times we're having conversations and we're getting to deeper levels, but the body stores energy, right? And it stores things, I'm told, electrically. And
Mhm.
what I'm finding is, like, even sometimes we're just sitting and we're talking about stuff, and you're going through let's say we're going through shoulder treatment number one, and they're we're sitting and just having a conversation, or they're doing some of their manual type of stuff, and we're able to get to, maybe a deep level on, okay, that's why that change happened. It was something that coach told you. It was something
Yeah.
that organization had you working on. Or, because sometimes, let's face it, guys, I think guys have the best of intentions, but sometimes coaches mess guys up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because they have this one way that they see it happening, And, you'll see a awesome example of a guy and you see him on TV, and then you have practice and you try to make 10 guys throw like that. It's like, hold on a minute. Each one of those guys is a little unique. Yes, you might be able to take a principle from what you saw there, but if you try to make each guy do or think about what that guy thinks about to do that, you're going to have very little success, versus if you can learn what each individual kind of, even asking them like, hey, watch a video. And instead of telling them what you see, ask them what they see. And you can start to kind of grasp, because I learned this when I was at Scottsdale Community College coaching. And I had index cards that I handed out to all my pitchers. And I went through a bunch of common cues. And those cues might have been something like stay back or get on top, or, whatever that cue was. And I wanted them to write down in like a sentence form what that meant. Mm-hmm. And, I went through, it was 10 or 12 cues. And then I, took all those in and I went and I looked, and like literally none of them said it exactly the same. And not only do we hear things different, but we also speak things different and we see things different. So like for one guy, he might think about, pulling down on the ball. Another guy, he doesn't feel that at all. Or, and in theory, everybody could say, yeah, a good throw. Somebody's, ripping down through that baseball, using the hill to their advantage, all these terms that we hear. But if you ask a kid what that means, a lot of times they have no idea, especially like you'll hear guys say, use your legs. Everybody's, you got to use your legs when you pitch. You go ask 10, 12-year-olds what that means, and you're going to see at least 6, 7, 8, maybe even 12 different ways to do it. Yeah. So I think what this has kind of allowed is a self-awareness for guys that I like to teach, so that these guys once again become their own best coaches. So I think, the fact that I can feel a muscle and I'm aware of even, I think this is another good part about the training, is that like, let's say I have a picture and I show it to a kid and he sees the outline of the muscles, and he doesn't have to know what those muscles are called, but I feel like just seeing the structure and understanding the function of that muscle helps them discover more of who they are as a pitcher.
Yeah.
Right. It's just an awareness.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. It's really all about muscle activation, right? And that muscle activation with direct current, especially if you've got somebody that's coming in with, as you mentioned, some, they've compensated because maybe, they got wrong advice, or maybe they got hurt and they're doing whatever they can. And the mechanics of throwing, which I think is amazing. That's why I love baseball. It's an art, right? Every pitcher has a different throwing style. Every hitter, has a different style, and it's all at the same time. Everyone's trying to accomplish the same goal, but they all do it just a bit differently. And it sounds like,
I think it gets us out of protect mode too, right? Where it's like, because what you're talking about, it is art and it's an expression, and it's like sometimes the term, we've all heard this, right? But they try to get guys to fit in a box. I say they, and they just means like, coaches or, organizations or whatever, but nobody specifically. But when they try to get guys into a box, guys now that, especially let's say that we're outside of the box kind of guys, they feel restrained. And it's like, you might have taken, tools away from a guy that, hey, he was really good at doing this, and now you have him doing this, and guess what? Now he's not as good. And now he's injured, and now, all these things. And, that's the human element here, right? Like, we're humans, and there's guys that have lives after they play. And I think a lot of times guys will get put on these pedestals, and I get that to a point, but also we have to remember these guys are human beings, and these guys are, fathers, and one day they might coach somebody, and we want them to be in an emotional and a mental state that they're making the world a better place. Versus I've dealt with a lot of different guys too that are on the opposite end of that spectrum, and they're bitter, and they're pissed at that guy that messed them up, and there's certain things that come out. And I think that's unhealthy for our next generation, versus if we can have guys who are maybe able to work through some of that stuff. I know this is a whole nother talk, but I feel like, part of what I like about what the direct current does for me too, is it's motivating, because I feel like I can continue to push that rock up the hill. Whereas like sometimes I would feel like, even if I did this 100 times, I'm not getting the result that I wanted out of it, versus now, like I said, I can do something that's, you know, a relatively, like, I can work out in my garage and I can get the workout like I was in, a world-class gym or whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love watching I like to call them these, direct current athletes, right? And the example is watching the command that a Matt Boyd has now after coming off of Tommy John and using the direct current, and to see the command he has on the mound is so inspiring, because his confidence level, he's, Jake's done a great job of working with him, and it's inspiring, because here's a guy, who was out of the game and now became an all-star. He's got his name being, battled around for maybe Cy Young and all this other fun stuff. And the command, it is fun to watch, because he's an artist. You guys are artists. These pitchers have to have that confidence, obviously, but more importantly, as you start, working and getting all the muscle activation necessary. I'm still amazed that guys can get up the next day after pitching, right? I mean, it's like that demand on the body and what these guys are trying to do is, I think, incredible, right? Because it's hard. I mean, to keep that up day in and day out,
especially
it's
mentally,
amazing.
and that's why I think that muscle mind connection that we're talking about, where it's like, if I'm more confident because I feel more connected to my body, that to me has a value when I go out to the mound, because confidence is number one. Like this game, it demands everything of you and it will expose everything of you at the same time. So there's no room for going out there and being careful. And that's why you see it all the time where guys will get injured or something and then they're careful. Whereas with this, it's like, if I can shut off like the brakes and I can go out there and let it fly, like there's something to that for sure. And I think that's part of what I see for guys with this that are using it specifically for coming off of, injury type of stuff, where it's like, you can learn how to let go again. You can learn how to, let that unleash the beast that's within inside of you, versus, holding back and trying to be perfect. Like, somebody told you needed to do this or something,
Yeah. Because the second you have that hesitation, and that's why, Jake, I love those videos, and I'm sure Coach Zinger does it, where, you're activating these muscles in a slow motion kind of environment, right? And it is mind muscle over matter, right? So now you can almost sense that activation throughout the whole process. So that was a great analogy, a great way to kind of, introduce it to our listeners. So for penny pitchers, let's talk a little bit about, if you're working with pitchers, or if somebody's considering using this technology or considering coming to your facility, why should they, be introduced to direct current, and whether it's at your facility or just wherever they're listening across the country?
Well, I mean, I would encourage people to do it because I think it's next level, but also I think, once again, it's that next frontier of, if you talk to a lot of guys, I think physically, we're doing really good with pushing our limits, but I feel like the mental connection to the body and the mind muscle connection is missing for a lot of guys. And I think what we're seeing with this too, you mentioned the word command, but the way I look at it is, like, a lot of times our line of, let's say, stuff over pitchability, there's been so much push in building stuff that there is, at times, we're losing the pitchability. And I think at the end of the day, like, if I'm training a guy, do I measure velocity? Do I measure spin? All that stuff? Absolutely. Do I think it's the end all be all? No. Is that what we're chasing? No. What we're chasing is the idea of getting guys out. And I think that when we were talking a minute ago, once again, it's the confidence. And I think the smarter you are, the better you use your tools that are available. I joke, it's like a alter ego, for an athlete, where I could be Bruce Wayne in the morning, but I got to be Batman when I'm on the mound. And I feel like this is another way to allow those superhero qualities, if you will. And that's usually how I kind of talk about this initiative with people, is like, it's going to help you tap into your superpowers. and it's something that's inside of you versus something that you're going to chase that's outside of you.
Just to be fair, Coach Zinger, I think you're more of a Wolverine in the morning, maybe Batman on the mound. I think that's your control there.
Except for I'm a Spartan. I'm a Spartan, so that's the only. I do love the character Wolverine though. Yeah, my son would tell you. I actually have some tiger claws up here on the wall that my Sifu gave me that are very Wolverine-like.
Well, this might be the because
we weren't going to let you.
We were not going to let you get away without giving us a tour of this all of your garage, your man cave.
Oh boy!
But before we go on that tour, I do want to ask, how can people get a hold of you? Are you on Instagram? I'm assuming. Yeah.
So I'm on Instagram as Coach Zinger, or I also have Fuel Factory Pitching. And then I am on Facebook somewhere, to be honest, but I lost the password like a year ago, and I haven't been on there in a long time. I just get a bunch of alerts. So I think Instagram's probably the best way to get a hold of me. I am on YouTube as well as the Coach Zinger. If you look, I think I've had a YouTube channel since 2004. So there's literally tens of thousands of videos that are on there on a few different channels. And then fuelfactorysports.com is my website.
Okay.
Love it.
Sarah's on top of it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is, we love getting the inside of especially what you do and how you do it and how you've incorporated. As a matter of fact, the last question I would have is, I know, you've got the over-the-counter portable devices. You've got tell us, I think we're going to start seeing more and more of the athletes using it. That we'll probably start seeing them in the bullpens. I've got to believe, just because of the activation portion of it and also recovery.
I would have loved it. And I was a guy routine wise, especially when I had my best seasons, I had managers who allowed me to do my routine. Sometimes guys do it different, but for me, it was I'd go out and watch about the first 4 innings of the game. And then I'd go into the clubhouse and I'd go through my little routine, and I'd crank on some music and I'd break a sweat. And for me, that's when I would be using it, is that pre-pitch, just the quick kind of, and I'd go through the feel good, the ones that I like, and just get a blast and then go, because I feel like the adrenaline's going to kick in either way. Right. And I think you could literally just say, hey, Zing, you got 5 pitches, let's go right now, and I'll go. Yeah. But I think over the long haul of the season, it's nice to be able to get prepped quickly, but also be able to not necessarily completely tax or blast yourself. And I think at times early in my career, I was guilty of that, where it's like, let's say it's a night that, I was kind of watching the game and I was going pitch for pitch for the guy, or, I had already gotten ready for a previous inning and then he got out of the jam and I was going to go back in, where it's like sometimes you'd use too much of your juice, and it might not affect you that night, but it's going to affect you 2 to 3 days later. And I feel like this, especially like for me too, I would have been using it on the bus,
no doubt,
back when I was traveling in between, because a lot of times 6'4" riding on a bus, like my low back would be just destroyed. My hamstrings are blown up, where it's like, if I could use the direct current on the bus, that would be phenomenal, and I think that's why, like for me, the portable unit, my wife laughs sometimes, but she'll be driving and I'm using it in the car.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Just because I want, a quick zap, or, hey, I'm sore here, I want to, feel better. So
yeah, just even the blood flow. I agree. This is an incredible, appreciate your time. We've got to get you to walk around and show and talk a little bit about this background, your man cave, because it looks pretty cool.
All right, so it's a little wild in here. We're gonna warn you, but we got some posters on the ceiling.
Oh,
so I do a lot of different breath work. We got some of the guys up there, some of my favorites. I got some guys. I've been fortunate to have some debuts. So going to some debut games and got some pictures that are personalized. What were you saying?
No, I love it. It's funny. Just those posters, you recognize all those names. So Pretty
And you
cool.
got the animals. We do some kung fu training, some 5 animal system, which is kind of fun. You got, Mike Tyson. Everybody's got
Oh
to play
yeah.
until you
Love
get
him.
punched in the face. You got some Bruce Lee.
Nice.
You
Yep.
got the big unit up there. Got kind of this Mook John right here, my wooden dummy. This is a martial arts tool, but Wing Chun, for example, has 108 moves. A baseball seam has 108 seams. So there was, for me originally, it was just out of curiosity, but there's patterns, and there's certain circles in the moves and spirals that definitely go with the throw. You're going to see a bunch of baseball cards. I love baseball cards, especially guys that I've trained or guys that I kind of looked up to. You'll see pretty much any of these cards that are signed are going to be guys that I've been able to train over the years, which is kind of fun. And just kind of goes through. These are my tiger claws I was telling you about from Sifu.
Yeah, those are nice.
But
Yeah,
those are pretty epic. And then just kind of continue the wallpaper here, a bunch of dudes. And then we'll see this. That's me at Michigan State my freshman year right there.
Look at
So
that.
it's
Those
kind of a
Spartans.
fun one. And then just this is kind of the corner here where a lot of times, for these guys too, it's keeping these guys in my thoughts and prayers too, because training pro guys, they're gone a majority of the year, right? So a lot of times it's more, obviously staying in communication, but also watching games and, studying film and just different stuff, so that, a lot of times these guys are fully capable of taking care of themselves. They have good support staffs with their staffs. It's just sometimes at a relationship level, it's nice to have somebody that's outside of the realm of where you're at, and if you stay up to date and you study, with these guys, and their deliveries and their pitches and how they use them and all that fun stuff, it just leads to sometimes useful conversations that are, like I mentioned earlier, but the black hole, where it's like you can talk to me about stuff on the field, off the field, whatever, but it's going to stay with me. I'm not going to go share it with an Instagram post or whatever. It's a safe space that I think a lot of times in this game is needed. I had guys that mentored me when I was coming up, so it was something that I just like to pass on to guys that like it.
Yeah, we're seeing that on so many levels on the professional athletes, just because the team trainers and all that they're fantastic, right? Great. But it's amazing how now individualized everything has to be, right? Especially
Well,
in
and
the
some
off
guys
season.
like to, like myself too. There was certain stuff that even now that it's like I do behind the scenes, if you will. There's certain, and it's not necessarily that it's a secret. It's just like some stuff to me should be done, with no lights on. Like there's,
Right.
There's just certain stuff, certain way, when you're soul searching, you're going deep, you're going through, sometimes struggles, and you mentioned it earlier, but it's like, a lot of times you get these hard patches, whether you call them, demons or whatever these dark moments are, that are these thoughts or these cycles that we can get in as humans. And I think sometimes it's just good to have, a safe space where, you're not under the camera. You're not this thing. You're a human, and you're allowed to need the healing and the love like the rest of us. So
Yeah, that's. I mean, with all your success, and you got to be inundated with, young players, collegiate players, high school players. I mean, are they coming from all over, or is it just local? Or I mean, it's. I've got to believe, because as a guru, as I call it now, I'm going to call you the AI first AI human of pitching.
Oh, that's funny.
I mean, do you have a lot of people? Obviously, the pros are coming off season and they can work with you. But do you get, how young have you had people come in, and how far?
Yeah, so I do camps all over the place. I've got other buddies, guys I've played with, or guys that I used to train that train guys. So one of my favorite things to do is go fly into I was just in Florida with one of my students, Chris Wellborn, at Top Gun Academy down in Florida, and we did a camp together. And then, you know, we have something that we've built. It's called the Fuel Chuckers Club. And the Fuel Chuckers Club is basically for coaches or parents or obviously players. And it's basically a place for me to dump all the videos and all the different stuff that we deal with. So, you know, basically providing solutions for different problems is basically what a coach is going to do, right? And we've been organizing and getting all that stuff. So like whether it's a mindset thing or if it's a warm up or I call it putting bullets back in the gun, but some guys will call it like arm care. You know, obviously I've got a whole chapter that I've been building for this. And, you know, one day, hopefully that's something that, you know, I can probably get you guys' blessing on, but just basically the different ways that I've been using the direct current with, you know, like I mentioned, either pre-throwing, post-throwing, you know, workout, or I'm watching a ball game and riding in the car, or, you know, I have yet to use it on an airplane, but the other day I was like, man, if I had it in my backpack right now, I would have had it on.
Yep. Yeah, you wouldn't be alone because we know these NFL guys. These NFL guys, man, they live on that on the plane, especially if on an away game. But yeah, we definitely, this has been incredible. I mean, what a great insight. I think, Jake, we got to set up another one, but I'd love to do it in his facility with a player, kind of give him some insight, you know, of you know, take us through, like maybe we'll make it a 30-minute, but just to kind of, you know, you have such a great methodology, obviously, as the AI of pitching. I'd love to see that in real time, just because this has been unbelievably insightful. We can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule to, you know, share some insights on who you are, what you've done, and very impressed. I tell you, Jake, from the start of the video to going through it, and even the man cave. The man cave is,
I know, right?
I mean,
there's more stories in that man cave. That's a whole podcast.
I was gonna say it's under construction still too. So it's kind of like me. I'm still under construction too. So
I love it. Well, good. Hey, we appreciate your time. Wish you all the best. Another phenomenal insight to how direct current has helped your pitchers, and very excited to keep working with you. And if there's ever anything you need, obviously now I owe Jake a raise because you pumped him up a little bit, which is never good for me, but maybe it's
you guys will have to come visit. Yeah. Come check out Primary Action and Fuel Factory here out in Avondale. Just wait probably another month and a half and you'll have just phenomenal weather. Right now it's pretty roasty, toasty, unless you like to feel like a blow dryer in your face. I'd probably wait.
Yeah, I remember some of those days when it's 110 and you're in an oven. So it's good stuff. Yep. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll definitely have to come visit, and we're definitely going to have to do another podcast in the facility so we can kind of maybe make it a little more interactive and see it at work, because you've got some great and again, to your point, it's an art form. This is what we tell all the clinics, all the doctors, I mean, this technology is so phenomenal that it is really, it's kind of an art. There's nothing you can do wrong. You know what I mean? And so as you start, you know, playing with it or tweaking with it, we try to give as much protocol, obviously, in some training, but we have found that Jake, just like you, working with 250 pitchers, MLB guys, pro, you take the best of all of it. Jake does the same with all the clinics and all the people that he's supported and our training staff. So I think it's just incredible that we're able to, you know, help you out, and you're taking full advantage of it from the performance side, the recovery, and everything else. So appreciate your time today, and wish you all the best.
Heck yeah, guys. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
Coach Sounds good. Jay, another great day, my friend.
Yeah, this one, I am looking forward to the second one. There are definitely more questions, but yeah, thanks for your time.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Enjoy your day.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.